Welcome to The Debate. So today we're analyzing the core philosophy of Academic Reset OS V1.5. It's this fascinating diagnostic tool that's aimed at solving what it calls the fake busy problem. Where high-performance professionals work 12 hours for what feels like 2 hours of actual progress.
Exactly. And the central question for us, I think, is whether the tool's really radical approach, this demand for absolute digital sovereignty and a rigid process architecture, is truly the necessary path, or if that framework is just too inflexible for the real world.
I'm going to argue that it is the necessary path, that only a structural forensic approach, I'm talking standard operating procedures, radical data ownership, can truly get rid of what the tool calls cognitive friction.
And I'll be arguing that while the diagnosis of reactive chaos is spot on, the solution itself is, well, it's critically flawed. I think the demand for total data sovereignty creates an impractical barrier that might actually get in the way of more urgent, pragmatic progress.
My position is that the tool correctly identifies that the problem isn't organization, but the elimination of excess. It's methodical. Professionals are losing, 5 to 10 hours a month just searching for files because of file chaos? To get to that NOVA goal of billing $10,000 a month without stress, they need foundational structure. They need the rails that all these disconnected $100 a month apps just can't provide. And so this kind of structural engineering is, for me, the only way to build a real execution algorithm.
Okay, I see that point, and it's a compelling argument for systemic clarity. But the solution it demands is it's excessively pure. The diagnosis of an execution gap is insightful, sure, but the remedy demanding 80 to 100% sovereignty where your entire digital brain is local, portable, just markdown files in Obsidian, it's just not possible for so many roles. I mean, think about financial managers or ISO consultants. They depend on industry standard CRMs for sales, for compliance. Asking for full data export verification for everything adds so much friction that it undermines the whole goal. We risk pushing users toward these overly rigid plans that just collapse in 3 weeks.
See, you characterize the structured SOPs as compliance. I view them as replacing that internal personal friction with measurable quality standards. The framework forces you to define processes across the scale triad: strategic, mission, and operational. That rigor is absolutely essential. Without defining every step from, say, an operational subscription review all the way up to a strategic project approval, the business just stays chaotic. It's always improvising.
But this is where the 80-20 rule has to come in, right? For the digital entrepreneur who's drowning in 8+ disconnected tools, 80% of the problem, the big energy leaks, can often be fixed with 20% of this complexity. An SOP for reviewing and canceling unused apps every month? That's simple elimination. It's powerful. Why force them to adopt a complete process architecture just for that? It feels like unnecessary overhead.
Because the operational discipline, it relies on structural integrity. Let's talk about the sovereignty trade-off. You're arguing for convenience with proprietary tools like Notion. I argue that this convenience leads directly to systemic fragility and a very high energy cost. The goal here isn't just data ownership. It's achieving what the material calls attentional sovereignty.
And what practically does that sovereignty gain us?
It gains us control over our own attention. If a service changes its pricing or its UI or disappears entirely, it forces these constant micro resets in your brain. Every notification, every forced context switch, that's an energy vampire. By moving to a sovereign, local system, you remove that dependence on outside platforms that generate constant cognitive distraction. That system dependence is the high cost of this gap.
Look, I'll concede that dependency carries a cost. Of course it does. However, high-performance professionals have to calculate the trade-off. If the pursuit of this maximal, distraction-free sovereignty prevents them from seamless, critical interoperability, if their local markdown-based brain can't talk to the cloud CRM they need to do their job, then the operational disruption, I think, outweighs the attentional benefit.
At the end of the day, the material makes it clear. Entropy is winning. It's resulting in a huge costo real de esta brecha, a real cost of this gap. The only way to combat that is through the engineering of a sovereign, structured system.
And I'd say the material's real value lies in its powerful diagnosis and how it quantifies these energy leaks. But the expert user has to decide if the pursuit of absolute data sovereignty is worth the potential sacrifice and convenience and, that necessary connection to mission-critical systems.
And I think we can both agree that the material provides a necessary framework for quantifying the hidden opportunity costs of these chaotic workflows, regardless of the ultimate decision.